In the beginning of my radio career, teaching career, I asked myself what was the purpose of sitting in front of a microphone and talking to people I'd never met and getting to know them as they get to know me. And I realized that the purpose of that was to awaken, to push and nudge those moments of stretching self into awakening, because that's what I wanted out of my life, was to become more and more awake and hopefully be that guide, that teacher, that facilitator, to ask that question to each and every one of you: are you awake? And what does that really mean? So how's that for a hook? Did I grab your attention? It's interesting because being coached, and so many people have thoughts to help bring more and more attention to the show. And all the research says, the first 60 seconds, you have to have the hook. And sometimes I get all wrapped up in how am I going to do the hook, and I get lost on what the message is going to be. And I just have to laugh at myself, because what's the message? The message is, I want to bring all that I am and everything that I've been able to learn and grow in this life and share that with all and everyone who wants to listen and grow with me, who wants to wake up with me. So that's my hook today. Good morning. I'm Dr. Guldal, and welcome to Are You Awake? And actually, it's 3:30 in the morning, and I have my coffee, and the first awakening is going to be my physical body, trying to wake up, get those endorphins going. Because you may have noticed I love my coffee. I think it's the Turkish in me. I think other naturopaths around would be pretty angry with me because I put dairy in my coffee. Yeah, I'm a naturopath, but I'm not a purist. We all have our vices, and mine's my coffee. As we talk about awakening today, what is Are You Awake, and what do we stand for? Now, the reason I'm talking about this today was not at all the topic that was going to be. It's because thank you. So many of you have been responding. You've been writing to connect@drguldal.com. You've been sending questions, comments. I thank you so much, and I encourage more and more of you to do that, because you're getting to know me, and I want to get to know you. I want to know who's out there, and what are you interested in? What do you want to know about? And if I can make that happen, I want to make that happen. So I've been receiving some comments and questions about, okay, are you awake? We asked the question, and we've been putting some things out there. What does it really mean? What does it mean for me? And I sat back and I thought, well, this is really legit, because I've never explained that. I just make this assumption, I suppose, that we all know what it means. So I'm going to address that today, but I want to take a minute to really encourage more and more of you to write. Connect@drguldal.com. I read every single one of them myself, and I'm organizing the thoughts that are coming, the questions that are coming, and I want to make sure that I address them. If you like what you're hearing, please consider subscribing to the podcast so you can get it right on your phone, your laptop, however it is that you listen, whether it's iTunes, Stitchers, or Web Talk Radio. I encourage you to do that. If you are interested, and if you want to take a few minutes to write a review, I would so appreciate that. I'm shooting for 100 reviews. I'd love to have that, because once that happens and the attention is out there, then more and more people will come, and they can ride on this journey along with me and the rest of us. And really, that's the main purpose of this, is to put myself out there for as many of you that want to listen. So like me on Facebook, Dr. Guldal, Are You Awake? You can go to areyouawakeshow.com. It'll lead you to all kinds of places. And once again, if you have any questions or comments, connect@drguldal.com. All right, so back to the subject at hand this morning. Are you awake? What does it mean? What does it mean for me? Well, when I was first asked to do radio years ago, I wanted to know, what was my goal in this? What was my purpose? I'm a teacher, I'm a healer, I'm a guide, psychologist, naturopath, all those things that I've talked about. But what do all of those things really have in common? What is my main purpose in life? What does it mean? And it's about awakening. And what does awakening means? It means that every single one of us, from the moment we're born, every human being on the planet, we have this place inside of us, this place of wisdom, this place of knowing. The little nudge, the intuition, if you will. Some people say that this is where God speaks to them. Some people say this is where God exists. Others feel it's the connection to Source, the universe, the divine, the greater expanse all around us, the people that we love. However it is that you connect to this place of wisdom, it's all correct, it's all perfect in its order, because we all have that connection, and it's so valuable. And the most important thing That's where our power lives. That's where we know all things. And with that awakened, with that clear, where the echoes are solid, and the knowing is solid in us, then we know everything. We know exactly which outfit to wear. We know which direction to drive to work. We know exactly how to speak, whom to speak to, what time of day to do it, which doctor to see, what path to follow. That power lives within all of us because that place does connect to something greater, to source, to the very knowing inside, and to all that is around us. What happens, however, is we're human. That's the challenge. As we move through life, we are taught so many things, all the rules and regulations of our culture, our family culture, our religion, our school, where we live, the subculture of where we live, all of those things, our gender, ethnicity, everything has messages. And these messages are about survival on this earth plane, how to be here. And then in that is our own personal story. The story of what we live, what we experience, the heartache, the suffering, the pain, our perception of that, where we are in our birth order. Were our parents divorced? Was there love in our household? Was there laughter in our household? Was there abuse in our household? How we took that in and became beings that live on automatic. That automatic place, it's great. It's about survival. We know how to get in the car and drive. We know how to do certain things. We know what we like, what we don't like. And we just go through life. We start eating the same types of foods. We unconsciously eat. One of the first things to go for many people is that knowing of hunger. You hear this often. We don't even know when we're hungry. We eat or don't eat. We starve ourselves, or we don't have time, or we just eat unconsciously because we're anxious or sad or lonely, but we don't know that. We just eat, binge eating, or eating too much ice cream, too much sugar, too much starch, or drinking. Maybe we're thinking we're having one, but 3 or 4 later, it's like, oh wow, I've had 3 or 4. I thought I was just having one. We tend to unconsciously, not paying attention, go through life. We get wrapped up in our stuff, whatever our stuff is. Money stress, health stress. We get wrapped up, and then we do these automatic behaviors that are really about distracting and comforting, but it doesn't give us any information. Then we start reacting to people based on tone or what they've said to us automatically. And life seems to be kind of the same all the time. I don't know if some of you have ever noticed, but the types of people in your life seem to be the same type of people over and over again. We end up feeling the same way in a work situation, in a friend situation, in families. Or by the same token, we keep thinking that we're making a change, or we've discovered a trigger that we have, and we think that we've changed it, and then we turn around and nothing's really changed. That's an automatic pattern that happens out of an unconscious, just getting through the day, surviving the day. We can be so unconscious in our day-to-day living. And I know most of you have had this experience where you get in the car and you're driving, and you drive from point A to point B, and you get to point B, but you don't have any recollection of the drive. But clearly you stopped at the red lights, used the blinker, braked appropriately. You're not dead. You haven't been in an accident. There's not a police car, behind you pulling into your driveway. How did we do that? How is our bodies? How is it possible that we can be doing 2 things at once? That's the very challenge of humanity. The mind can do that. The mind can split, do the drive perfectly without a ticket, without getting hurt, but having no recollection, while in our minds we're doing whatever the spin is. If you notice, the spin is always the same. We all have our laundry list of the things that we worry about, the things that we think about. And then behind the laundry list, behind the thinking behind the thinking, I call that the subcommittee, and then the subcommittee behind the subcommittee, the voice that's always whispering in the dark. There's certain themes. There it happens again. I knew it would always be this way. I knew no matter what it wouldn't work. People always hurt me. Doesn't anybody ever see me? We have these themes and patterns. But before we can even get to that, there's all of this clutter of day-to-day, all of this buildup of just life and life situations. So awakening, being awake, means becoming conscious, being clear. There's an old Navajo saying It goes something like, when you're walking, know you're walking. When you're eating, know you're eating. When you're breathing, know you're breathing. Buddhists call that mindfulness. Ancient Native Americans spoke about that, about being in the space that you are, because the human mind is our very challenge. Maybe we're all here for that. I don't know. And that's actually the podcast we were going to do today. We're going to do that another day. But all of us have this mind that's all about survival, and it collects all the negative experiences to keep us safe. But as life goes on, and as we're taught to not listen to the nudge inside, we become more and more distant from that place. It's as simple as, we have a feeling, don't turn right. Don't turn right, but we do anyway. Bam, traffic jam. And we're like, oh, I knew better. Or I really need to call that person. I really need to call that person. And something happens and we know we should have called that person. That nudge, that little knowing, can actually be so clear. And being awake is about finding that clarity. It's about removing the clutter. For example, Bill. Let's talk about Bill. Bill's a client of mine that I had 4 or 5 businesses, always successful, and then they weren't. Rides high, makes a ton of money, and about year 4 or 5, boom, business drops, loses everything, has to start over. And he's done this. I think I met him when he was late 50s. So his entire life. Now, that's a pattern, clearly. He knows it's a pattern. He comes in to see me. We start talking, he's trying to probe and trying to understand where this pattern started from, because sometimes it really helps to understand its origin. And if we understand the origin, we can start tracking our own personal relationship to that. So to try to shorten this for you, his father lost everything. His father's father lost everything. Okay, that seems really simple, and I'm trying to give you a simple example. But what happened was, every time he made money, deep inside of himself, he had guilt. Because his father was gone, everybody in his family in the past, he was the only one making money. But he couldn't hear the guilt, he couldn't feel the guilt. He wasn't awakened to it, he was asleep to it, because he was going to do it differently. So he's charging through life, doing it differently. But behind the scenes, there were all of these unconscious processes of how he would spend and where he would spend it, how he wouldn't save. And as clear as that is when I'm telling you the story, from the outside looking in, for him, he couldn't see it. The moment it showed up inside of him, think about those moments when you have that aha, right? That's what we're talking about. The moment that showed up inside of him, he stopped mid-sentence. I didn't tell him. Because if I tell you, it's just me telling your brain. Your deep soul, your subconscious, your midbrain has to get it, So the moment he got it, he stopped mid-sentence, looked at me, teared up, and said, oh my God, that feeling in my stomach is guilt. Then we started looking at the pattern of how he would spend it away. And he realized, because then he could start backtracking, he realized in the spending, he was buying and doing stuff that he thought his father would have wanted to do. Very clear example of from asleep to awake, what could happen. Take a moment to think about your own lives. Those aha moments. How many times have we heard, whether people we know, we've said it, whether we've seen it on television, a movie, the wake-up call. Human beings get so comfortable in the day-to-day in our own stuff that it takes a crisis of some sort. So for this person, the crisis was always losing money, always having to start over, never having anything to, in savings. Sometimes it's a cancer, an illness, a death, a loss. It has to be so big before it shakes us up and wakes us up. The idea of this show, the idea of life, truly I believe for all of us, is to learn to listen in that empowered place. Had he been trained early on to listen to his insides, he may have caught that earlier. But what about just the smaller things? It doesn't have to be such a big aha. The simple things like how many people, I don't know the numbers offhand right now, but I'm going to tell you the last time I looked, over 80% of people who knew better, who maybe had an illness like a heart disease or some type of chronic illness, who knew that they needed to do certain things diet-wise, that would help them feel better. Over 80% of the people, they don't do it. Isn't that like, no, I know you're laughing because I'm just as guilty. We all have this place where we know the information, but we can't make the change inside. Our bodies speak because our intuition, that wisdom place we're talking about, is inside of our body. Our body actually gives us data all the time. We don't do it. We feel bad. You know, we eat the junk, let's say sugar and starch and wheat, gluten, all that stuff we're not supposed to, many of us. We wake up feeling terrible, even if we don't have a disease. But we're talking about over 80% of people that have a disease don't do what's good for them because of the automatic. We're on such automatic that we don't listen. Because when we truly pay attention, our bodies will tell us, this doesn't feel good. I had somebody just yesterday in my office who I've been talking about wheat and gluten and sugar to this young woman for years. And she's like, oh, we tried it for 2 weeks. We didn't eat starch and sugar. She goes, I can't believe how good I feel. And I said, what happened? She goes, I'm not doing it anymore. I said, why not? Well, as we started talking, her automatic for work stress is sugar. So not that she doesn't want to feel better, not that she doesn't want to be healthy, and she does have a chronic illness. She's, been very sick in the past. She's young. She looks better, feels better, has more energy when she does what she needs to do. But what stops her is she's on an automatic pattern of when she's stressed out at work, she grabs the bread, she grabs the potato chips, she grabs the ice cream. And that automatic is so much more powerful than cognitively trying to do better. You see, that's the trick. If we just cognitively try to make the change, because I've read about it or my doctors have told me, or I know, I tried it a couple of weeks, I felt better, it doesn't work. It has to come from that place of knowing, and we have to learn how to listen. Awakening, having consciousness, is that listening place. So as we processed that last night, and she started watching and feeling those behaviors, then it became, what does she feel during her work stress? What happens inside of her? Well, for this particular woman, we're going to call her Bethany. For Bethany, it reminded her of when she was a little girl, and she was sure she'd done everything wrong. And the only thing she did at that time, because she grew up in an ethnic family and they fed you, so whenever she felt bad, Grandma would feed her. So the way she was trying to make herself feel better was to eat these foods that worked when she was a child. We need to learn to listen. So again, take a moment and think about your eating patterns and your distraction patterns. What are you going to find? What's underneath it? For Bethany, feeling bad equaled the only way she got attention and nurturing, and that was through food. It didn't make her feel less bad about herself, but she was comforted for a moment. So she brings that forward into her life as an adult, but it doesn't help her. It's to her detriment. So just taking a moment to breathe in and check inside, that's all we did. I didn't do any magic hocus pocus. I didn't do any spiritual energy healing in that moment. It was being a mirror, holding the space and letting her take a moment to breathe and go inside. And just tracked the feeling of the comfort. And she came to her own knowing. And that's what we all need to do, is come to our own knowing. We take a breath, we go inside, and we track. It's really important, because if there's something that you want different and you haven't been able to make it different, it's because you're trying with your mind and you're not listening to your soul. The soul will always call us. It calls us to awakening. It calls us to transforming. Think of every single story that we grew up with as a transformation story. We go from one thing, Cinderella, to a princess, Sleeping Beauty, to being awakened. all of these transformation stories are messages from our soul to the world. Every single country in the world from the beginning of time has the same stories. Why? Because all of those stories live inside of us. Because our souls are trying to let our minds know that we can transform. We can have that power. And that is about removing the clutter. We have to clear it out. And on that note, the next step of this is to pay attention to tone. People don't hear our words. They hear the tone it's delivered in. When we don't have something cleaned up, when we're not clear, when it's not our soul speaking, and it's our wounds speaking, then whoever we're speaking to is going to hear the vibration. They're going to hear a high pitch, they're going to hear the aggravation, and they're going to respond to that. And then many of us are left with, he never listens to me, they never listen to me. And we always fight over the same topic. The fight is really about tone. When we have clarity, when we allow the soul to speak and step forward, it's matter of fact, it's clear and direct. Then only content is heard. So how do we do that? Same process. You sit back, you take a deep breath, and you hear how you've been delivering that same message that never gets heard. Listen for the tone. Who is that tone? Is it your mother? Is it your father? Is it the little child inside of you? Is it whiny? Is it a temper tantrum? Or does it say, no one hears me, no one hears me, no one hears me? What is it vibrating with? Each and every one of us can take control of that. And in that taking control of, the soul gets to speak, that knowing comes alive. It's really one of the simplest things ever. Taking complete control and finding the power to have an understanding of self is the way in which we understand others. Clearing the clutter and letting the soul speak and hearing the soul. Of course, meditation and prayer are also very important, and the more we do that, the more we can hear our soul. But if you're not someone that prays, and if you're not someone that meditates, and maybe you're doing the awareness activation exercises at the end of these podcasts, which are full of vibration and great healing, and we'll do one today, the simple step of taking a breath in and listening to the whisper in your heart. That was said that way to me, in exactly that way, the whisper in your heart, by an abbot, a monk in Trinidad, say Benedictine monastery in Trinidad and Tobago, Father John. Just want to shout out to him. We were talking about consciousness and how everything has clarity and how we get there. And his description of that is the more quiet he gets inside, the louder the whisper in the heart becomes. I loved it because it was much more succinctly said than I've ever said anything ever in my life, because I tend to go on and on in case you haven't noticed. Taking that breath. So you just go in. The minute you feel something, your body will tell you every single time. There's a hook. My hook always was, you've heard the story. Was really bullied. I think it would be super illegal today. But the way I was bullied, it was years before I made the connection. But whenever I would be around, a group of guys, because it was the whole basketball team. So whenever, in my young woman days, when I would be around a group of men, I would feel something right in my chest. It would twist. And immediately I would tuck in. I'd be afraid to speak. I'd tuck my head. I'd immediately, inside, that little voice would go, "You're fat, you're ugly, shut up, back off, go away, don't let him see you." Now, I can say that with clarity, but at the time it happened so fast. It was just a truth, right? It felt like that's what was true. But I could feel it in my physical body. That also is the whisper in your heart. The tugs and the pulls and the twists and the turns that we have in our bodies. When you start noticing there's certain ones that happen often, that is your soul speaking to you. That is your body speaking to you. It's fascinating, really. If you can just take a moment and get objective and step back, it's truly amazing the way our soul can speak to us, the way that wisdom will always be there. So what's called intuition is really, that sixth sense. It's really our true essence without the clutter. And it's our job to declutter. And that's what Are You Awake means. There's an ancient Chinese proverb that says, everything we hear and everything we see is our history. Think about that. It's really what we're talking about. And then, people have written about that since and basically say that we make a judgment about somebody, and forever after, that's who that person is. We never really see who's in front of us. Those of you that are over 20 and you've moved out, you ever go home for the holidays? Aren't you instantly back that kid? I can have 25 PhDs, but when I go back to Turkey, I'm still that kid. I'm still that fat kid that everybody picked on. They still treat me that way. It's so interesting. Because that's what the human mind does. But the moment we start decluttering and we see ourselves in clarity, then we start seeing everyone in front of us exactly who they are in that moment today. Interesting how all this comes around. And it's what the Buddha taught, but it's what all mystics have taught. Detachment comes. Detachment doesn't mean not caring. Detachment means declutter. We have so much clutter. And if we look at our lives, we can see the sadness, the heartache, the suffering. It's there. Life isn't easy. Yet there's so much joy and bliss to be had. And the more awakened we are, the more we listen, the more we declutter, the more we can touch that bliss center, because the bliss center is in our body, it's in the wisdom, it's in that place that the soul calls. So that's why this show is entitled, Are You Awake? And every single thing that I do is my journey to continue to awaken myself and to bring all of you along with me. So I thank you for listening today. Hang tight. We're going to do an exercise to help declutter and awaken. Just remember, if you open your crown and open your heart, you will hear the soul's call. And from that space, you'll always be able to walk and talk sacred. Okay. Get comfortable. I was like a little intense on that one, huh? Okay. Take a breath. Deep, deep breath in. I can feel so many of you out there just releasing, grabbing the intensity and riding the wave with me today. That's it. Just let it go. And whatever you found while you were listening, wherever you found that space in your body, the tug, the pull, the twist, go there right now. Go there with your heart. Go there with compassion and caring. And know that's clutter. Just needs to be cleaned out. No judgment. Today's not about judgment. Never is. This is about self-care. This is about empowerment. Find the twist, tug, pull, ache, whatever that is. Find that spot and put your right hand on it. And through the palm of your right hand, feel this beautiful blue light. Cool blue. Just let that blue light enter the space. As you're sitting there or lying there with this blue light in that space, and if for you it isn't a physical space, it's more emotional, then put your hand on your heart. If it's more a memory or a thought, then put your hand on your forehead over your third eye. And let that blue light stream through the palm of your hand. Let it fill the space. And let that space speak to you. Give you whatever memories you may have. Whatever moments need to be uncovered. And look at those moments just for what they are. And understand how that automatic, that pattern, how it showed up in you, how it became part of your conditioned automatic way in the world. Now open your heart and let the energy of your heart is carrying sadness, grief, and joy at the uncovering. All those emotions will happen in their own way, in their own pace, in their own order. There you go. Just let it unfold for you. This is uncovering. This is learning the story so that you have an awakened moment, more clarity, more consciousness, more sense of self. And with this stronger sense of self, other people start making more sense. So if you need to have any feeling, let it emerge. Now, take that memory, take that experience, take whatever the physical, emotional expression of that memory of those moments that have awakened in you. Let them fill up inside of your hand. So where the blue light was coming into your body, now that blue light is pulling like a magnet, like a laser beam, pulling that out of that space in your body, your heart, your forehead, your physical body, into the palm of your hand like a laser beam, pulling it right out. Now take your hand off of that space, shake it out. And as you're shaking it out, feel the top of your head and feel white light pouring from the sky and filling your entire being. Feel the soothing, feel the joy, and as it's filling your being, notice how solid your feet feel. The more awakened we are, the more solid on the planet, on the earth plane that we are. Feel your feet solid, your entire body filled with light. Put a smile on your face. Keep shaking your hand out till it's all gone. Claim your knowing. Claim your power. And know that with each show, more and more empowerment is yours. With each step that you take, you have that ability, that responsibility. Another big breath, a deep sigh. So next time somebody asks you, are you awake? You can say, I am right now.